Hello and welcome back to the 4th episode. I can't believe we've made it this far of the 13th Sign podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Billy, and I'm here with Elise again.
Hey.
Today we're just going to be going through how we got into astrology and kind of our journey with it. Please let us know on our Instagram as well how you got into astrology, because everyone's got really interesting paths on how they got there. And yeah, very, very exciting episode ahead. Just another disclaimer, we are not astrologers. We are idiots and we don't know anything at all. We're just
learning and figuring it out as we go along. But yeah, we're not professionals in any capacity.
Yeah, we're just trying to identify patterns that we see.
It's just our reflections and of what's going on and what we're learning in the process.
Yeah, so hopefully this will encourage you to pick up an astrology book and listen to a few more podcasts from actual astrologers and get more learning.
Yeah. I think, mainly one of our goals with doing this podcast is not to get everyone to become an astrologer. Like, we're not astrologers, obviously. But it's really
the conversation.
Yeah, to create the conversation and also to let you figure it out for yourself, and not just astrology, like mundane astrology, but also like your chart and be an expert in you through astrology.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably go into it on more detail when we go through and talk about our own separate journeys, but I think one of the most amazing things for us in our friendship is that astrology has just given us such an amazing way to communicate with each other. Like, we're able to communicate so transparently just through the language of astrology. Like, instead of just saying I'm sad, I know the language to express what I'm actually feeling apart from what's visible.
Totally.
You know?
And I feel like as a Scorpio moon, like, I'm always like trying to give hints of what I'm feeling, but I just don't want to give it fully away.
Yeah. And so it kind of gives me the knowledge that you're not going to do that, so I can't expect you as a Gemini that talks, like Gemini moon, that opens up and will tell everyone anything, but then with a Scorpio sun that stops me from doing that, sometimes I completely can understand how you feel there. But before we jump into too much about that, I did just kind of want to go over where the planets are now, because there's a few things that are happening.
I'm sure you've seen it on your Instagram if you follow any astrologers. Everyone's talking about it at the moment.
Yeah. We've got a shit ton of planets in retrograde. And no, Mercury is not one of them. Mercury doesn't go into retrograde until October, so we've still got a couple months of communication. But yeah, we've got a lot of stuff in retrograde at the moment. And yeah, so it's just really fun.
As if 2020 hasn't been fun already.
Yeah.
It's just extra fun.
We've got until the end of December, I think, before it starts to get better.
Yeah.
I think we're going to, in December, it has to be better.
Yeah, we've just got to get through the next couple of months of another upheaval.
Because one of the biggest ones that everyone's talking about in retrograde is Mars in Aries, isn't it? Venus just moved into Leo. Mars is in Aries. I think that it's staying in retrograde until December. And then we've also got, this will probably be different from when you guys are listening, but our moon's currently in Cancer. Obviously, our sun's still in Virgo.
Yeah, it is the 12th of September, Australian Eastern Standard Time.
You didn't give a time, but that's fine. Yeah. You gave a date, but that's cool.
It's 10:44 Eastern Standard Time.
AM as well, but
not PM. AM.
And then the moon's in Cancer all day today, so we might get a little emotional. In this episode. Don't know. Our Mercury's in Libra, so you might be having weirder conversations.
Both sides conversations.
Yeah.
Both sides of the coin.
Yeah, exactly. As we said, Venus is in Leo, so yeah, love life is going to be very powerful.
Yes.
Very intense. And then we've got Jupiter and Saturn obviously in Capricorn, which is really fun. Uranus is in Taurus, Neptune is in Pisces, and Pluto is obviously still in Capricorn. So yeah, we've got a lot of fun stuff happening. if you want to kick off, Elise, how did you get into astrology?
Well, it all started. No, I've always been into, like, I guess, witchcraft and those spiritual things. And I always knew astrology was a thing. Like, I'm talking, like, when I was, like, 10 years old. Like, that's when I've always been into, like, magic and stuff when I was a kid. I would literally, when I was, like, 6 years old, I would go into the garden and pick sticks, and I would get my mum's, like, massive, super deep soup pot thing. And we only had one. We had one super deep one. And I would always, like, secretly steal it. And I would go out into the garden and I would, like, find all these flowers and sticks and random shit. And I would put it into my soup pot. I would make potions. And then I would also... I really wanted a cool, like, Book of Shadows, but obviously I didn't have one.
Oh,
so
this is really, really cool. I love your Book of Shadows. It's so awesome.
Well, no, that's my cool Book of Shadows. This was my
Oh, okay.
This Book of Shadows, I literally went into my mum's cupboard, and there was, like, one or two half-filled photo albums. And one was, like, brown and, like, cool and sort of looked old-timey. So I would take the photos out. Like, my mum hated me doing this. No, because I would get in trouble and then I would have to take it out. And I would write little potions and I would slip them into the photo slot. So I'd be like, 1 stick, 2 flowers.
I think you should, when this episode goes up, you should post a picture of your Book of Shadows on our Instagram so people can see what it's like now. She's like, it's all handmade. It's like a green leather, beautiful.
The book she's talking about is the replica Book of Shadows from Charmed that I made when I was, I think I was like 13, with my pop. So he was a builder, and I literally, like, he didn't know what it was for. Like, if he knew what it was for...
He didn't know that you were using it to hex people.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't know what was going on.
To kill demons.
But I was like, no, it's just an art project, because...
Because it's witchcraft.
Yeah, exactly. It's crafts. So, long story kind of short, in year 7 and 8 and 9, I did this thing called the Duke of Edinburgh Award, which is, I don't know if it's in your school. Anyways, you have to do, like, a certain amount of hours of a charity work and then sport and then also a hobby.
I thought it was like a secret, like, Hogwarts society. Like,
I mean, it kind of was.
Competition.
I wish it was. Yeah, so my hobby was drawing. But really, it was just because I wanted to draw in my Book of Shadows all the time. So I would watch Charmed. I would pause when it was on
each page. Because each episode had a different spell.
Yeah, at least one. Or multiple. So I'd pause it and then I'd draw it. So anyways, that's what Billy's talking about, my cool Book of Shadows that I still have here today.
It's like on a stand in her, like, witchy area.
In my witchy altar corner.
Yeah, no, it's really sorry, but continue on with your other story. I just wanted to interrupt.
But anyways, that was my first Book of Shadows. It was a photo album that I took the photos out of, and then it was really only for, like, when I was using it, because then my mum would get mad and then put the photos back in. So yeah, that's how I sort of started with, like, the witchcraft route.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was like 14 to I'd say 14, 15, I started, like, actually studying, like, Wicca and witchcraft and got into that sort of thing. And yeah, I always knew about sun signs and, like, I knew that there was a lot to astrology, but I was like, oh, that's too much work to delve into, like, because it's so vast. And I was like, that intimidated me.
You go into it and you can't understand anything that anyone says because you just don't get it. Like, you go into astrology, you might know a bit about it, your sun sign. So, like, me as a Scorpio, it's like, I went into astrology being like, Scorpio, taboo, sex. And then it's like, then everyone's talking about houses, degrees, all of the planets. And I'm like, what the fuck
like,
is
I
this?
don't know what that means. Yeah, so it was just, like, too much for my brain to, like, fathom. So yeah, I was always like, I would always read in magazines, you know, the horoscopes, and just be like, oh, my Taurus sun, hee hee. Anyways, so that was my route. And then I would say 2 years ago or something, it was I was going through a rough patch to say the least.
Worse than 2020, believe it or
It
not.
was worse. Like, people were like, oh, 2020 is so terrible. I'm like, this is a great year for me. Yeah, 2018 was not a great time. Anyways, so I was going through a really stressful, emotional, traumatic time that was very continuous, like day to day. Just like didn't know what was going to happen every single day, and that like completely threw me off. So I sort of found a bit of comfort in astrology, and it was really just horoscopes at that point. Like, I was just reading Cafe Astrology, the daily horoscopes for Taurus, just because I needed something to focus on and like a bit of like insight into what the day was going to be, even if it didn't turn out to be whatever the horoscopes said.
Because the horoscopes, when they make them, like if it's an actual astrologer making it, they'll make a complete chart of a different person and do it for that person. So yeah, they make up like they'll just pick random dates in that sign and make up a full chart for that person, so then they can really, because they need to understand the person and understand what's happening to them in that moment, and even though it's not a real person, and then they just apply it to that. So it's like, even though it's your sun sign, it might not really apply to you too much, because you've got all of your other like moon rising and all of that. So they usually recommend that you read your big three at least on your chart and always think about it in applying to that certain planet.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that's how it worked.
Yeah, that's why it takes them so long. That's why Elisa hates doing horoscopes, because it
it's
literally takes her like 13 hours straight to write a horoscope for each sign. Whereas like me doing my year 8 magazine assignment, writing a horoscope, I was just wrote bullshit for each one.
Did you actually do a year 8?
Yeah, we had to make a magazine for either year 8 or year 9, and I wrote horoscopes for each one.
Love that.
Because everyone was like, horoscopes are bullshit. So I was like, okay, I'll just write bullshit.
Oh my god.
I'd love to read it now and see what I wrote for everyone. It was probably like Capricorn. Oh, you're gonna be super outgoing and super loving this month. You're gonna find a new man.
That's wild. I wonder if anyone at school like read them and was like, oh, that's what happened today. Oh my god, Billy is like so smart.
No one read it. Don't worry.
Anyways, and also at the same time, I was learning about the moon. So I love planning more than I should, and I always sort of go through these random phases where I'm sure everyone does, but you have like, you plan a few weeks and you do really well, and for those few weeks you're like smashing goals and everything, and then for a lot of women at that time of the month, you just like have a week where you're just like, I can't do anything, and you just want to eat and you just want to sleep and you just want to watch TV or whatever. And
then you get a huge feel of disappointment because you didn't achieve all of the things that you wanted to achieve.
And I hated going through the cycle all the time of just being like, oh, well, like I've ruined these 3 weeks of goodness because I've done this 1 week of like supposed badness.
It's like diet culture.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was like, I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore. So I was trying to find ways of being like
forgiving to yourself.
Yeah, and also just being like going through the motions.
Mm-hmm. It's really like the tides of the ocean. It's like you can either live your whole life trying to fight against the waves, or you can just go with it and you'll end up getting so much further ahead.
And that's exactly what I did with learning like the moon signs and how the moon moves through the month. And that really helped me because I was able to be like, okay, well, I know why for these 2 weeks or whatever, I'm feeling really motivated and I'm wanting to achieve my goals and like plan and manifest those goals or whatever. And then for the 2 weeks after or whatever, I'm reflecting and I'm chilling out and I'm doing self-care and I'm letting myself be. And so through the moon phases and through learning about the moon, then I started learning about the planets and actually like astrology. And obviously credit does go to Eliza, Eliza Kelly. If you don't follow her on Instagram, you should. She's the best.
She's the most beautiful,
she's such a beautiful person
and
too.
Angelic goddess in the world. And she has an amazing podcast as well. It's called Stars Like Us, so you should totally give that a listen. It's a lot better than ours.
So she's had this Constellation Club for, it's literally been a year, and I've followed her like since before Constellation Club started, and obviously I've been a part of that since its inception. So that's definitely been a contributing factor. Also, just like they have monthly covered meetings, which has been really good to sort of like be tracking the moon as well with my planning and stuff like
it's
that.
every new moon and full moon.
Yeah. So that's how I sort of went into it, and then obviously you learn about astrology as you go through, because that's Eliza's an astrologer. So yeah, that's how I really got into it from start to finish.
Do you want to talk about when you actually got your astrology reading?
Oh well? Yeah,
because that was a big like turning point for you, I think.
Yeah,
as well.
I did get a reading with Eliza quite a while ago.
It was
now,
like at the beginning of the year or the end of last year.
I honestly can't remember when it was. But yeah, being able, because I've looked at my chart and stuff, and I've sort of seen
things that you can relate to. Because I think, sorry to interject, but I think the thing that makes it the most difficult for people that don't have their own perceptions of each planet, I think it's really difficult for them to go through and read their chart or anyone else's chart, because you'll go through and it will read what it's like to be a Gemini moon. In that whole spiel, it doesn't say what it's like to be a Gemini moon with a Scorpio sun.
Yes.
So it's like everything
and
is
in that house.
Yeah, and because then it'll give you a description of what it's like to have Mars in the 12th house or whatever. But it's like it doesn't tell you what it's like to have like Aquarius in Mars in the 12th house.
Yeah.
So it's like you could read the top bit of Mars in Aquarius and read the bottom part of Mars in the 12th house, and they could completely contradict each other, and then you just look at it, and if it's your first time looking into astrology, you're just like, well, it contradicts each other, so obviously it's wrong, and just trying to it's just being generic to try and meet everyone. But it's just because you haven't had a person look at it and evaluate how each one of those things affects each other, because it's not like with astrology, your makeup of astrology isn't like you just have an arm and a leg and you just put it all together. Every single part of it is so unique, and it all works together so harmoniously and relates to each other so much that you really need to look at the whole picture.
Yeah, I think like the one thing that I get asked all the time is to sort of like prove it, like to prove astrology's real. And I'm like, well, one, I don't find it necessary to prove it, because I'm not trying to convince anyone that doesn't want to be convinced that astrology is real. Like I do it for me, not for anyone else.
Exactly.
And I'm not going to be like, well, you're like this because of this and blah blah blah. Like sometimes I do it, I'm like, oh, that's such Pisces moon, but like just for the funnies. But yeah, a lot of people are like, yeah, but like that doesn't relate to me. So, and I'm like, well, that's because you need to look at your actual chart. It's like, as we talk about on this podcast, we talk about vibes a lot, but it's like, think about the energy. Like every planet and house and whatever have an energy, and it's like
a combination. This is I don't know whether did we say it on the podcast or did I just say it to you one time? How I was, or I might have been, I don't even know whether I said this to you or my mum, but I think it was you. But like Elise and I could get given the exact same ingredients, so we could get given eggs, milk, self-raising flour, cinnamon, whatever. We could get the exact same ingredients. I could make a cake. Someone else could make cupcakes. Elise might make cookies. Someone else might make a brownie. Like, we could all make completely different things just because of the ratios and the mixture and the process of how we do everything.
And also based on our life experience.
Yes.
So it's nature versus nurture. So it's like Billy could have made a cake before with so-and-so, so she's been like, oh, I'm going to make this again, but then made it in her own way.
And my oven could set the temperature way too high and it might get burnt, and then I have to turn it into something else because of the trauma, you know. like so much shit happens, like, because that's what, when I was going through I was talking with Travis about his chart, and we we're going through it, and it was talking about a lot of struggles and stuff, and he was like, well, I don't really relate to that. And if I'd only known him then, I'd be like, yeah, I didn't really see that. I don't really get why that's there. But, like, I've known him since he was 14. So I'm like, no, think about when you were in high school. This was, like, one of your biggest problems was, like how you want to, like, impress people, and you'll, like, because he's a Gemini rising. So he would always manipulate himself to always make other people happy and try and fit into groups and all of that. Whereas now he's very much built into his Aquarius sun, and he's very much just himself. If you don't like it, that's your problem. He's just happy to be himself and do his own thing and continue to grow and develop. And there was a lot of things in his chart that were struggles and, like, some people would say negatives, but they've just been things that he's in the past already worked through.
Yeah. I feel like that's definitely similar to me as well, is because I never understood my Scorpio moon. Like, I just did not, like, I was always a very, like, I grew up with a pretty chill, cookie cutter childhood, and, like, I love having a chat, and, like, talking about traumas and blah, 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 blah. But this is before I had trauma.
Yeah.
And then, so I would love, you know, I would read the Scorpio moon, and I would be like, that's not me. Like, I'm not like that.
And the thing would be is, before you had trauma, you didn't have to talk about your trauma. You would just talk about other people's trauma, which
Exactly.
Scorpio fucking loves.
Yeah, exactly.
To
and
know
I love
everything.
other people's
Yeah, you love to know everything about everyone else's trauma.
and analyze that and be like, ... this. But when it's me,
yeah,
let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's move on to a different subject. Let's talk about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like I never understood, even in high school, like, when I would, like, sort of read the horoscopes, and I think I had found out at one point in time that I was a Scorpio moon, but that's about it. But I definitely, the only thing I could really relate to being a Taurus sun and a Scorpio moon is that they're opposites. Mm-hmm. And I
can relate to that as well.
Can relate. Because I always was like, well, yeah, I'm a Taurus, but I'm not all a Taurus, and that doesn't, like, apply to me. Like, I'm not really, well, I definitely was lazier in high school, but
I don't think Tauruses are inherently lazy. Yeah. I think they're just pleasure seekers, and if something isn't satisfying, then they don't want to do it.
100%, and that's so me.
Like, if you're getting, like, satisfied and enjoyment out of it, then you're happy to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Like eating.
Exactly. Yeah, so I definitely didn't understand my Scorpio moon before I sort of dealt with trauma and relationships and that sort of stuff. And also having a Gemini Venus was confusing to me. I think I was still very much in a fantasy land of, like, I'm a Taurus and that means I'm, like, a Taurus Venus. Like, that was in my brain. But now, being through a few relationships and sort of seeing my viewpoint on love and also everything,
how long you were single for as well, it makes a lot of sense with your Gemini Venus as well.
True.
Because you weren't just, like, throwing yourself out there. That's one of the things I admire with you, as, like, you are very happy on your own. Like, even when you're in relationships, you really enjoy your alone time and, like, your quality time. And I think that's, like, your Scorpio moon and your Venus in Gemini as well.
Yep, true.
I'll start off because you started, like, from when you were a kid, so yeah. I'll talk about my little Scorpio.
Oh God, here we go.
I'll save majority of the stories for a separate Scorpio episode.
Or the Scorpio childhood story.
Yeah, but, like, to give you an idea of me as a kid, I feel like I was a very, very spiritual child. Like, obviously children are so open-minded, and I love that about kids, is they're so open-minded to the world and the possibilities and Santa. And the Tooth Fairy.
Side note, do you remember as a kid actually believing in any of those things?
I 100% believed in it.
Oh, okay, because I don't remember ever believing in it. Like, I just went with it, but I was like...
Oh, no. I 100% believed in it, wholeheartedly. I had great friends in primary school. Whenever I'd have a sleepover, and it was one time I lost a tooth, and I was so excited because the tooth fairy was gonna come, and my mum was like, "Oh, maybe the tooth fairy won't come because you'll be scared because there's so many people in your room," and my friggin' bitchy friends thought it was the biggest prank and the funniest thing in the world to pretend to be the tooth fairy to me, and it was so mean.
How did they pretend?
Well, they did it. They took my tooth, and then they stuffed a coin under there, and then I woke up in the morning, and then I was so excited, and then they shattered my dreams, and then I went out for dinner, and I was like, and then I was sitting down with my mum, and I think I found out Santa wasn't real first, because I still was convinced after that. I just thought that they were playing a prank. I found out Santa wasn't real, and then we were literally at the pub, like obviously a child-friendly pub. We were in the dining area, just for anyone that doesn't know how Australian pubs work. And I was eating a chicken palmy, and I was bawling my eyes out, and I was like, "So Santa's not real?" And then I was like, "Oh no, the tooth fairy!" And then I literally like threw my hands on the table and was like, "Don't tell me the Easter Bunny as well." And
Oh no.
I was heartbroken because they'd written me letters.
Yeah, did you get letters from Santa? Or did you write letters?
Like, my mum would be like, because it was a couple of times, like, she got caught out. Like, one time my brother got, like, this massive-ass tractor. And the house that we lived in, it was, like, we lived on, like, one side of the house. And then the other side of the house was, like, vacant. And so she hid Ryan's, like, big presents over there. And we went over there to play hide and seek. And so we found the tractor, and I was like, "Oh my God." And then Mum had to like write a letter saying that Santa didn't have enough room in his sleigh. And so
nice save from your mum.
And like when we would go over to New Zealand for like Easter and stuff, she'd like write really big letters saying that that he didn't realise that we were here, not in Australia. So we left all of our stuff in Australia, and like all of these cute letters, and like it wouldn't look like my mum's handwriting, and I was so
she's so clever.
Yeah,
doing that, because I find sometimes the like mums don't think about that. They'd be like, "Oh, I'm just like gonna believe this," but I recognize the handwriting, and I would be like,
"Well, you know how." So my auntie, who I was told you she's the Virgo stellium, Scorpio stellium.
Yes.
She figured out that Santa wasn't real when she got toys that were made in China.
What? Because it's not from the North Pole.
Yeah. So that's how she found out. And then
so
but yeah, I was very much a believer. And my other auntie, she believed Santa was real up until she moved out of home, and Santa didn't come one year, and she had a mental breakdown, and she was 18.
What the heck? What?
Yeah. So obviously she was just pretending that that it existed up until she was 18, because I don't know how you.
Yeah. Also, I had to go along with it because my sister's 8 years younger than me.
Yeah, well, my brother's 5 years younger than me, and he pretty much, like, that he found out probably a year or two after I did. Because he went and found, my brother has lots of weird Scorpio stories, which I'll tell you later on, if you're interested, but he found all of our teeth.
Oh,
my mum kept all of our teeth all wrapped up in individual, like she had each tooth wrapped up in individual tissue paper with like the date that we lost it and like all of that shit, and it was like all set out.
Wow,
to, like,
that's so meticulous. My mum literally just had like a little box with a teddy bear on the top, and it said like so and so's teeth or something, and she would just chuckle.
Yeah.
Who knows when and what tooth that was.
But my brother unwrapped every single tooth.
Ooh.
And then Mum was trying to convince him that she bought them off the tooth fairy because she didn't want to lose them. And then, yeah, it was this whole big thing. But Ryan got, like, petrified because he just found a heap of, like, teeth. Like,
oh, my God.
Obviously, that's
How old was he when he found it?
Oh, like, really young. Like, it was before I found out that it wasn't real. Like, Mum, like, hid that from me as well.
That's wild.
But yeah, like, I was, yeah, pretty weird Scorpio child. Like, I used to wake up in the middle of the night and we had like mirrors that I've told you this
Oh,
story.
yeah.
We had like 3 mirrors on the wall, so if you stood and looked into the mirror, there'd be 3 reflections. And I used to grab my big towel, I'd have the light on, so it was like over the top, so then you get a shadow, and then I'd lift the towel up over my head, and I would hold like little seances with myself, and I would like talk to myself
I feel like
have
that's
like
so
little
Gemini
meetings.
though as well.
Yeah, it's a
Your-
Gemini moon.
Your split personality is just like, hello everyone.
No, but it was like
Welcome to the meeting.
But like I was internally like me having those things. It wasn't like me talking and seeing my reflection. It was like I would look at each one, and then they would each have something to say, and then I would turn and like look.
It was just each part of your personality.
Yeah, and so like,
interesting.
and I had like I would say I had a really really magical young childhood. Like we grew up on like over 1,000 acres. I would just go for horse rides, and I would pretend to be like in Narnia, pretty much. Like that was
a dream.
Like I lived in like a Narnia kind of fantasy as a kid. We had like beautiful creeks that I'd go like ride the horse for hours, trail riding, and then
oh my god,
yeah,
that's literally my saddle club dreams.
Yeah, no, it was like I couldn't have asked for a better young childhood. And then we moved, and I think like reality set in for me really, really hard when I hit puberty.
Where did you move to? No, it's the Cancer moon.
Yeah, Cancer moon's making me emotional. So then we moved, and I think it was like with the traumas and stuff from my friendships in like year 5, that really gave me a really weird sense of self. And I think because I was a very, very like outgoing child, very Gemini. Gemini moon was very prominent in my childhood. And then I think when I went into like being 12 and stuff, then I felt the pressure of society hit me like a brick, because I'd always just been called weird and crazy and like all of that. So I think I really shut out a lot of my spiritual self and like my happiness. Like I was very much, this is another Gemini thing, I was very much just trying to reflect whatever people wanted. So I think I really changed myself into a more presentable person. Like I was still crazy to other people, but I was nowhere near as like happy and like not carey as I was when I was a younger kid. And then going through high school, that just like tumbled. And I think so I really shut out all of the spiritual side, because I was the same. Like I would try and I always used to make like mud pies and like do spells and all of that. Like my mum loved Charmed, so again I watched a lot of Charmed growing up, and like Sabrina and like all of that. Like I very much really, really wanted like the witch. Like another thing I used to do, I didn't even think about this until right now. It would be like raining, full moon. I used to go into the horse water trough. So like it was big enough for me, and I used to just lay in them and float. And my mum would come, and she would be like yelling at me, because she's like, "You're going to die. Like you're going to drown, or you're going to get like," because it would be pouring rain, and I would just be like,
"Oh my god, that's like such a vibe."
In a horse water trough, just like
under the full moon.
Full moon. Absorbing
Cleanse me.
Yeah, like literally just like, yeah, that's fucking Scorpio's fuck, isn't it? And that, like all of that type of shit. And then it was like I really, really blocked that out and didn't want to have like any, and I went to a Christian high school and stuff, so it was very much like, oh, people are so stupid for believing in Christianity, so people are so stupid for believing anything. I'm such an atheist, I don't believe in anything. After I die, I'm dead, I'm dust, like doesn't really matter. And like it was very much just me protecting that. Yeah, going through high school and whatever, had all of that trauma.
That fun trauma.
That fun self-discovery trauma. And then leaving, and like I'd always kind of read my Scorpio, and I was like, it just talked about sex and like secretive and like deceptive and like all of these things, and I was like, I think that this is kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I don't really relate to any of it. I would read my Scorpio horoscope, and as I said before, I just thought horoscopes were complete bullshit that they just did to fill up a page in a magazine like I did in year 9. And then it went on from there, and then I graduated, left school and whatever, and then it wasn't really, like, I knew that there was people I didn't get along with. So I hated Tauruses, hated Geminis. Hated. Like, I would be like, I'd just see so many traits in them, and I'd be like, you're so this, you're so that, like, I really don't like that part of you. And I think it was me seeing all of the parts of myself that I'd always had to hide from when I was a kid. Like, all of the stuff that I'd loved about being a young child, I'd see people portraying that outwardly, and I would hate them for it. I'd, like, hate the fact that, like, a Taurus is able to, like, put authority down and be a boss and be like, this is what I want, this is what I'm going to do. And then, like, seeing, like, Geminis and, like, Libras and whatever, like, frolicking, having a great time, being 100% authentic to themselves, I'm like, I would have such a resentment and a hate towards people that were like that. So I very much thought that I hated Geminis and Tauruses. I was like, I hate them. And it's just because I'm a Scorpio, so I'm too secretive, and I'm so mysterious that these two signs are just too out there. I don't like them. And I remember the moment I saw my chart.
Yeah. I remember, like, because we talked about it, so you've probably heard before, me and Billy used to live together. But we never talked about astrology. Like, we both...
The most we really talked about on witchy stuff was, like, I was like, oh, I love your Charmed Book of Shadows.
Yeah.
I love Charmed.
Yeah.
And, like, because you had, like, a whole room in the back that was, like, your witchy area. It was fucking insane.
Yeah, but I would say, what do you reckon, like, a year ago, we started talking, like, we'd get together and talk about, like, just life and stuff and catch up after we stopped living together. I don't know when you started asking me questions about it.
Yeah, so for me, 2019 was the worst year of my life. It was the year I got married.
That was the good part, though.
Yeah, but, like, I honestly, like, I can say I wasn't 100% present at my wedding because I was just going through so much internal turmoil. Like, 2020 is an angel of a year compared to 2019 for me. And I think I went through a lot of self-reflection, and I didn't understand myself. Because, like, I would compare myself to, like, my husband. Like, my husband went through the same trauma that I did. He cried about it for one night and then seemed fine. I cried about it every day for a year, and I was not fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't understand it. And I think, like, for me as well, another thing we were talking about before is with my Gemini moon, I love patterns. And all throughout high school, the only thing that, like, I really understood was patterns. I loved math. I loved all of the, like, looking at things and finding a pattern in it to try and make sense of it. And that was, like, the only thing that could make sense to me was a pattern. And I didn't understand why I couldn't see what I was going through in my mental state getting better, because it wasn't. And I think it has to go through such a cycle, and that's all astrology is. So for me, it was like going through it, being, like, so drained and having nothing to... Oh my god, this Cancer moon. Like, a feeling like I have, like, nothing to make sense of. I was just drowning. Like you said, like, you're trying to fight something and it's the tide, and, you know. And so, yeah, I was really, really struggling with trying to understand it. And then I kind of knew a little bit about astrology, and then I was, like, learning more, and it kind of was making sense how it's like everything is a cycle. Everything you have to go through things for them to get better. Everything will gradually or quickly, your life can change from a second, but then it'll continue to get worse, and then it'll get better. Even like with 2020 as a year of like societally, it's getting worse, but it is going to get better, and there is a next phase in the cycle to like improve upon. And I think like learning about the mundane astrology, like, and mundane is the like societal astrology, like what's happening in like the whole of Australia or the whole of the United States or the whole of the planet, of the world in general. And I think learning about that and learning that it's bigger than me and there's so much more that's going to happen, and that I'm going to continue to go through all of these cycles and stuff. Everything has a cycle, and then you get through it, and then you just do it again.
Yeah, definitely.
That was a very long-winded point, sorry.
You're right. Mine was pretty much the same the other time.
I was just trying not to cry, so I was just kept on saying cycles.
It's the same words. It's just saying words.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also like, learning that you can't skip steps, especially dealing with trauma. It's like you have to go through it, and if you don't talk about it, Mercury retrograde's going to come along and you're going to have to, or like, just certain things.
There's always things that, and like everything happens at the exact moment in time that it is supposed to.
Well, it's like everything has a duality, like in life, in magic, in like astrology, there's always two sides. It's like you've got your positive traits of a Gemini, you've got your negative traits of a Gemini, and like it depends which way it's going to swing
and how you graduate through that as well. And like I forgot to say this, but this is like one of the biggest things that really convinced me on astrology is, like, as I said, when I was younger, like one of the biggest things that I found comfort in was patterns. And it wasn't until I started listening to the Stars Like Us podcast, and I knew my big three. I didn't really know my full chart, and I was like listening to it, and I was listening to it like a year after the episodes came out, when she was predicting everything, because like I started listening to it at the beginning of this year, and this is when I really, really got, like, as soon as the pandemic hit, I was like, okay, I'm sold on astrology. It is 100%. Like, for me, it makes 100% sense, because they talk about like the patterns of the planets, what the planet energy means in this certain sign, and then they're like, well, this is what happened when it was in this sign last time, and it's like, oh yeah, we got the same thing. The same exact thing happened. It's just worse this time because there's other things that happened. Because we didn't
deal with it the first time around properly. Yeah. Or whatever. And like, and going through like even the predictions on the Black Lives Matter movement, and like, it's like you can't make that shit up. Like, literally. Like you can't go out as a professional astrologer, and obviously she didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but she knew something big was going to happen. But you can't be like, oh, I think that there's going to be something to do with illness. And then, like, even after it happened, she was, like, looking into it further, and it was, like, literally to do with, like, she was like, oh, yeah, respiratory health. And, like, you can't just be like, oh, yeah, this scripture says this, if it didn't. And, like, a lot of the astrology books that were written, like, 50 plus years ago all stopped in the year 2020 because everyone was like, let's leave that.
Too
much to go into.
Yeah, but I think it's like really awesome because we're kind of getting to see the end of a cycle, and I think it's so awesome with like the generational signs, like Pluto. It's in like your Scorpio, I'm Sag. Now it's in Capricorn. And like we were talking about the Me Too movement, like it was started by the Scorpios, enforced by the Sages, and now the Capricorns, like the Gen Zers, are really just taking hold and exposing governments and like doing all of these amazing things. I just can't wait to see what the inventive Aquarius is going to bring to it. And then we're going to see that, like, hopefully we'll all be alive to see like the end of the Pluto cycle. And I'm just so excited.
Me too.
Yeah.
The thing also that when I was like delving into witchcraft, like, many, many, many years ago, I would always hear this like talk about the age of Aquarius, and I never understood what that even meant. And now sort of being like I knew it was just going to be more spiritual and like everything like that, and like it's weird like seeing the slow progression towards that. Like think about like 5 years ago, no one was into astrology. No one was into witchcraft. No one, like, it was fucking weird. Like, when I didn't tell hardly anyone when I was like 14 or whatever, like, doing tarot readings. Like, I'd do it with my friends, but they just thought I was taking the piss. Like, I didn't think, no one thought it was actually real. And I'd like do a tarot reading for them, and they'd just do it for funsies. And then it'd end up being like really, really, really accurate. And then, but like everyone just thought I was a bit of a weirdo, and that's fine. And I expected that.
To
but
be
no
fair,
one
you were
really...
you were a very out there, like, witchy. You're a very out there witchy person because it's your aesthetic.
Yeah, it's my
so
aesthetic.
So it's not like you're like pulling out like a secret thing that's hidden under your bed that you put away every night. It's like it's like a quarter of your house.
Yeah. I remember like when I was living the house that we were living in together, like as Billy said, I had a whole witchy room. But it was so funny because
you had like a witchy room and then a vintage room.
Yeah. Well, my whole house was vintage, but then I had like my actual witchy room. And it was so funny, and like when people would come into our house, so my ex-partner was very eccentric with the way he dressed and like very sort of like into metal, and that like he was a musician as well, so like he had a lot of like satanic vibes going on. And then it was me dressing. I used to dress like 1940s, 1950s style all the time. And you'd come into my house and it would be like, it's old Queenslander, and like everything's antique and everything's like vintage. And then you just go into this like random room and it's all this witchcraft stuff. And I remember like every time one of his friends would come in and they'd just see all the satanic shit. Not satanic, it was pentagrams, and witchcraft stuff and books and etc. And they'd be like, oh, like Cody, like what's this, blah blah blah, and he'd be like, that's Elise's. And they'd be like, what? What do you mean? Like sweet little Elise in her petticoat and heels and
your cute little hair.
Yeah, my cute little pin curled hair, just being innocent. But yeah, so I always found it so hilarious with that contrast because people just assumed that it was all of his stuff. And I was like, no, it's mine.
But yeah, that was basically our astrology.
Oh yeah,
astrology journeys. Obviously you have to. I feel like you have to get to a certain point to accept something that is so unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like I think I really needed to go through everything to be literally like asking myself internally, what does all of this mean? What's the point?
I think it's really helped me just be okay with the direction of my life and the pace as well. Because I think when you're, high school kid or whatever, you're like, by 25, I'm going to be doing this. And by 30, I'm going to be doing this. And like, it's going to be just like all uphill.
Your
and
mum?
It's going to be great. Oh, okay. So, what Billy's talking about is, so my mum.
Pisces moon.
Yeah. So she's an Aries sun, Pisces moon, Capricorn rising. Yes. So she was going through our memorabilia storage stuff and she found this list that she made when she was, I think, 17.
Yeah.
And it was so hilarious. I'll see if I can find the picture. It was like of what each year was going to be or whatever. So it was like 18, graduate, 20, get married, and all this stuff. And it was literally like, I think 30 was raise kids and get a part-time job. And then like 50 was literally like, retire. And then 60 was like,
reflect on my life and say goodbyes or some shit.
And then it was like 70 was like, accept death. And then it was like, 80 was like, slowly dying. And then 90 was like, die. Or 100 was like, die. This is very morbid.
No. She was quite young when she said that she was gonna die.
Yeah, it was like, it was like 50 was like getting ready for death.
It was like half of her life was just preparing to die.
Oh, so
Because like
funny.
after you have kids, what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was very just like kids, part-time job, retire.
You know, that's actually a statistic, is the earlier you have kids, the earlier you die.
Oh, God. Oh, thank God. I'm going to have kids when I'm like 40, so.
Yeah, because it's like
I suppose they keep you young if you're actually old.
Well, like if you think about like spiders.
What about spiders?
No, if you think about like a spider's lifestyle, or like any animal that lives for a really short period of time, it's like literally they mate and then they die. And it's like if you think about it, like our lifespan is just extended over a longer period of time. So it's like you mate, you reproduce, you raise that young to the point where they can like live on their own, and then you're done. You can die.
You're done.
Like there's no point to your life anymore.
Well, that's morbid.
But yeah, so that's kind of our astrology journeys, how we got into it. Hopefully it will give you guys a little bit more perspective on why we have certain opinions about things.
And you don't need to like be an astrologer or be super into it to like just understand bits and pieces and understand it through your chart.
And even if you just want to look at astrology through like people being like, oh my god, like I don't know my sun sign, but Mercury's in retrograde, I can't talk, my phone doesn't work,
Mercury's in Gatorade.
Yeah. And like I always make fun of it, but it's like even just people understanding, like, look, there's going to be times when communication is difficult. Sometimes that you might feel like you're going to rush into and make like an irrational decision. Like me and my husband were like signing house papers, like to buy a house during a Mercury retrograde, and I was like, fuck, this is a bad idea, and everything just turned into a shit show, and now we're still dealing with like the legal ramifications from them fucking us over. And it's like Mercury in retrograde, and something else fucked was happening at the same time. Oh, it was when we were having all of those eclipses. So it's just a really, really fucking bad time to try and make decisions. And yeah, so like just knowing like, hey, I really want to get bangs. Oh, Mercury's in retrograde. Probably shouldn't do that right now. Like even if it's just that smaller of an understanding of astrology, it really helps you.
It's really just like a bit of more of an insight into like what's going on. And I don't know, it makes things easier, I think. Because I feel like when you're on the fence for deciding things, or like you're like, should I wait or should I do this, blah blah blah, it just gives like another like
reinforcement that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And like I think one thing that really, really helps me is I try and like, I really, really want to start journaling. But one thing that is helping is I have like time passages on my phone. So I just, whenever I'm feeling a certain like droop, like feeling like I'm slumping for a couple days, I'll just look and be like, oh, okay, so the moon is in this sign. Like, because you usually struggle when the moon's in Scorpio. And
yeah, I do.
Yeah. And I think it's like just being like, okay, this is in this sign. I'm feeling the same way. It's probably a pattern, and it's fine because I know that at 7:30 p.m. it's going to move into whatever, and it's going to be better.
Yeah, I think it's also like being able to do that and be like, okay, well, for the next 2 days, the moon's in Scorpio or something, I know I'm going to be an emotional beach. So then I can plan for that and be like, okay, next 2 days I'm going to like just chill out. I'm just going to do what
not put
I
any
need.
pressure on myself.
Not put any pressure. And also, and then after those days I can continue to do whatever.
And that's what I was saying with like diet culture and stuff. Like I don't diet anymore because I just think that it's really, really toxic. But when I was doing that, I think if I had astrology with me, it wouldn't have been as toxic because I would have been able to forgive myself, and because the moon matches your 28-day like menstrual cycle as well, if you're regular. Yeah. So it's very much like all. If the moon affects the water in the fucking ocean, I think it can affect our blood.
Yeah, considering aren't we like 70% water or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope that's the right percentage.
Yes, and you're extra salty water because you're a salty beach.
Wait, are you saying Scorpios are salty?
No, I'm saying you're a salty.
Oh,
beach.
Just me.
Yeah, you're just you. But yeah, anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. We really, really appreciate it. Please give us feedback on our Instagram.
Yeah, and as Billy said before, let us know how you got into astrology or witchcraft or whatever you're into.
Yeah, make an Instagram story and be proud of your astrology. Share memes on your story. Let everyone know that you're an astrology weirdo. It's really something to be proud of. And we really, really love the fact that people are actually listening to it. So we really, really do appreciate it. We're just doing this for fun, but
Yeah,
hopefully
it's wild
you guys
when people
enjoy it
tell
too.
me that they actually enjoy it. I'm like, really?
You actually listen to it, and
Yeah.
then they'll say something that we talked about at the very end, and I'm like, oh wow.
Yeah, I'm
They
like,
made
wait,
it
so
through.
you're not just listening to it on mute?
Yeah.
Like, from like low volume.
Yeah. So yeah, we really, really do appreciate it, even though like obviously it's only a small amount of people. We really do value every single one of you. And next week we're going to be going through the planets, and then we'll go through the houses, and so you'll get a little bit more insight. But we just want to break up the intense ones with a little bit more fun and chat, because astrology is a lot more of a conversation, and it's a lot more about learning the language, and I feel like you can't learn the language unless you're talking about it, you know?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Signing off.
Signing off. See you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.